I thank you for inviting me to this webinar. Um, the topic that has been assigned to me is degenerative lumbar spine. And is my presentation visible now?
Yes, visible.
Okay. So what we're going to do is, this is a very simple presentation, but then back pain is is probably the second most common reason why people go to see a doctor worldwide after upper respiratory tract infection. So all of us in our practices as general orthopedic surgeons um, will see a lot of back pains. So I think it's important to stay up to date with what is the current concepts. So I talk about three clinical scenarios. One is acute back pain, one is chronic back pain, and one is back pain radiating down to the leg. So acute back pain, very common scenario. The duration of pain is a few hours to a few days. There's no radiation below down the leg. Movements of the lumbar spine are typically painful, and neurological examination is normal. Fortunately, the natural history is very favorable. The symptoms subside spontaneously in a majority of patients. Scans and X-rays are not usually needed in these patients, and management usually consists of a combination of NSAIDs and maybe some physiotherapy. So then we come to chronic back pain. This is a more difficult problem to treat. Duration lasting from weeks to months, does not radiate to the legs below the knees. It may radiate to the buttocks and the back of the thigh, uh, typically aggravated by activities and certain postures and a normal neurological examination. The causes may be multiple, could be just muscle fatigue or poor posture for people who sit for long periods of time. It could be arthritis in the facet joints or disc degeneration. It could be due to spondylolisthesis, could be due to spondylolysis. Stress and anxiety is something that we normally ignore, but it's a significant cause for uh, back pain. It may increase the chronicity of back pain, increases the disability caused by back pain. So stress and anxiety is being recognized more and more as a perpetuator for chronic back pain. So in patients with chronic back pain, it may be worthwhile getting X-rays and scans done just to find out what the cause of the pain is before starting treatment. And you need to remember there are two kinds of pains that we normally deal with. One is mechanical back pain, which is typically dull aching, increases its activity, relieved by rest, and does not usually radiate below the knees, as opposed to inflammatory back pain. So mechanical back pain is activity related back pain. Inflammatory back pain is back pain at rest, which is relieved by activity. So typically in the lower back, buttocks, and back of the thigh, and may indicate a seronegative spondyloarthropathy like ankylosing spondylitis. So the incidence of bilateral sacroiliitis, which is a MRI finding of seronegative spondyloarthropathy, is around 15% in patients presenting with back pain. So it's something that you need to look at more carefully, especially in patients who give you the history of rest pain or pain in the morning when they wake up, which is relieved by activity. But most of these back pains are innocuous, but there are a few that you cannot miss out on, and these are the red flags. So if somebody presents with back pain below the age of 20 or above the age of 70, need to be careful, need to investigate them a little more. If it's associated with a significant fall or an injury, they need to be investigated more. If the back pain is associated with fever or loss of weight, you need to investigate them some more. If there is worsening leg pain, numbness, weakness, or bladder problems, they need to be investigated. If the pain is constant, it's continuous at rest or at night, wakes them up from their sleep or disturbs their sleep, you need to look at them more carefully and investigate them more. And symptoms not settling down with medications or other forms of non-operative therapy also need to be looked at more carefully. So chronic pain, chronic back pain, that's typically back pain more than 3 months. The as I'm this doesn't I mean, I just need to give a disclaimer here. So I'm not dealing with tumors and infections in this talk. So it's predominantly degenerative back pain. So chronic back pain, the treatment, the first modality of treatment that you should try is non-surgical. And chronic back pain does not respond very well to NSAIDs because you cannot give NSAIDs for long periods of time. So physiotherapy is a good modality, and exactly what physiotherapy works, we will deal with later. A lot of our patients go see the clinical psychologist for pain counseling and do benefit from that. I work in Bangalore, where we have a large number of people working in the IT industry. So ergonomics and the position of the chair and the table and the computer and the laptop and all those ergonomic bits of advice I get the physiotherapist to give the patients. So if the second step is injections and the third one is surgery, we'll come back to all of these later. So the first one we discussed was acute low back pain. The second one we discussed was chronic back pain. And now we're going to discuss back pain radiating down the leg. So typically the pain radiates down below the knee. So if you want to call leg pain radicular, it has to be typically in the dermatome of the affected nerve. So just buttock pain or back or posterior thigh pain may be just referred pain and should not be confused with radicular pain. So typically radicular pain is aggravated by standing, walking. They may or may not be associated with numbness and weakness in the legs. And it could be due to either a slip disc where the pain is more acute or something more chronic like lumbar canal stenosis. So slip disc or a disc herniation, there are three components that we need to look at. One is the radicular leg pain. And like I said, the leg pain should be in the dermatome of the affected nerve for you to say that the disc that you see on the MRI is the cause of the pain. It may or may not be associated with motor and sensory deficits, and rarely may be associated with the cauda equina syndrome, which presents with perianal numbness and in the later stages, maybe even urinary retention. Fortunately, the natural history of lumbar disc herniation is favorable. A majority of patients settle down without any surgical intervention. Around 70 to 80% of the patients settle down without any surgical intervention over a period of 6 to 8 weeks. So it's a small minority that eventually requires surgery. This was actually recognized by Hippocrates also way back, although he was not really able to associate the pain with a disc herniation. He thought it was a subluxed hip. He mentioned that the pain lasts for 40 days in young men before resolving. That's 6 weeks. And he treated it with warm water application, fumigation, and even donkey's milk. So whether whatever treatment you give, a majority of them do settle down. The indications for lumbar discectomy are very clear. So if symptoms fail to resolve following a reasonable period of non-operative treatment, which is 4 to 6 weeks, or if there is a significant or progressive neurological deficit or a cauda equina syndrome, these are the indications for lumbar discectomy. The size of the disc really is not an indication for lumbar discectomy. So the second reason why people have pain going down into the legs, other than lumbar disc herniation, is lumbar canal stenosis, and that is due to narrowing of the spinal canal. We all know this. There's facet spurs from the side. There may be a disc bulge or vertebral spurs from the front, and thickened ligamentum flavum from the back, all of which combine together to reduce the space available for the nerves in the spinal canal, as seen on the sagittal and axial MRI sections. So typically these patients have got pain in the calves, which is called claudication. The pain is relieved by any activity that involves flexion of the spine, like pushing a shopping cart or a bicycle, because flexion of the spine increases the size of the spinal canal as opposed to extension when they stand upright or when they walk, which reduces the space available for the neural structures. So unfortunately, the natural history of lumbar canal stenosis is not as favorable as lumbar disc herniation. We know that there have been a lot of studies on this, including the very large sport trial from the US. We know for sure that surgical decompression gives very good results, and we know that in a majority of non-operative patients do not worsen. So what this means is that if the patients have got severe symptoms, then they're very unlikely to improve with non-operative treatment, and surgery may be an option for them. If they have deteriorating symptoms as a result of lumbar canal stenosis, that's predominantly what you're looking at is walking distance and maybe neurology. If they have deteriorating symptoms, then surgery may be an option. But if they have very mild symptoms that does not really impact their day-to-day activities, then you can give them a trial of non-operative treatment. So when we talk about degenerative conditions in the lumbar spine, this is the step ladder approach to treatment. So the first step is medications. We'll come back to what medications, then some physiotherapy may be useful. We'll come back to what physiotherapy. Spinal injections are a good option, and surgery. So you have many surgical options, not many, 3 at least. So in the lumbar spine, you can either do a decompression discectomy only, you can do a fusion only, or you can do a decompression and fusion surgeries. And we'll just go down to what condition requires what procedure. But before you do that, to achieve a good outcome, there should be clinico-radiological correlation. So the symptoms must match the signs, must match the imaging, and only then will you end up with a good outcome. So choosing the appropriate surgery requires a detailed history, whether the pain is in the leg or the back and leg. And when you talk about leg pain, not all leg pains are radicular or claudication. So posterior, gluteal pain, back of the thigh pain may be referred pain. And you need to actually ask the patients exactly where the pain is. You ask them to point it out to you, because if you ask them, they will say, you ask them, do you have leg pain? They say, we have leg pain. And it may, for them, buttock pain may be leg pain. They may be referring to back of thigh pain. So if you want to call the pain radicular, it has to be in the dermatome of the affected nerve. And typically claudication pains are felt in the calf. So based on your signs and symptoms and based on diagnostic imaging, you can make a diagnosis. Either are you dealing with the herniation, stenosis, listhesis, lysis, facet arthritis, or disc degeneration. So we look at the 2 things that you need to remember is leg pain, decompression and discectomy are treatments for leg pain. Decompression and discectomy are not back pain surgeries. Fusion may be a back pain surgery either to address a pre-existing instability or to address painful facet joints, which is osteoarthritis of the facet joints, or address instability resulting from the surgery itself. And it's important to be able to locate the pain generator using clinical history, using imaging. If you can locate the pain generator, you're better off when you come to surgical options. And it's important to remember that fusion is not the panacea for all back pains. So we look at 5 clinical scenarios. So if somebody comes, when I've used instability rather loosely here, and for the purposes of this talk, when I say instability, it means either spondylolisthesis or spondylolysis. So if the patient has got leg pain only with no instability, and like I said, no instability means no lysis or listhesis, this picture which I shown here, an L4-5 disc herniation with right-sided radiculopathy, or a lumbar canal stenosis, L4-5 stenosis with bilateral claudication. So it's only leg pain, and the treatment for that is either discectomy in the case of a disc herniation, or a circumferential decompression in the case of lumbar canal stenosis. The second scenario is when there is leg pain with instability. So take this 45-year-old male who has a large disc here and also has a spondylolysis that you can see very clearly here where my pointer is, and a bit of a grade 1 listhesis. Now, this patient will probably benefit with decompression and instrumented fusion surgery, because your decompression alone may further destabilize that segment. The third one is back pain only with no instability. So this is a very tricky one, because a lot of times we really don't know, we may not know where the pain generator is. So you look at the usual culprits. Is it the facets that are causing pain? If there is evidence of facet arthritis on the x-rays and imaging, and clinical history suggestive of facetogenic pain, wherein the patient has got pain when they stand up from a sitting position, or extend the spine, anything that increases the stresses on the posterior elements, then the patient may be having facet arthritis. And the treatment for that, initially at least, would be a combination of facet injections and physiotherapy. If the pain generator is the degenerated disc itself, and we know that degenerated discs can occasionally cause, not always, but can cause pain, they clinically they have more pain on when the anterior column is loaded, as in sitting or a sitting intolerance, and imaging will confirm the diagnosis, and the treatment should initially at least start off with non-operative treatments like physiotherapy. If you're not sure of the pain generator or unsure of the pain generator, don't go ahead with surgery. So this is for patients with back pain only, with no instability. And when I say instability, I mean no lysis, no listhesis. So don't miss sacroiliitis. Like I said, 15%. One of our studies showed that 15% of our patients had bilateral sacroiliitis as the cause of their pain, without any other significant pathology in the lumbar spine. So something not to be missed. So this is an example of a patient with back pain only, and that's what the MRI looked like. There was a small disc bulge here. There was an annular tear here. You can see this, my pointer here on this high intensity zone in the posterior annulus. And this patient unfortunately underwent a decompression discectomy surgery. So this is what they ended up with. So if you look at the post-op X-ray, you can see that the nerve roots are all bundled up here, the sign of arachnoiditis. And now the patient has come with leg pain, which is neuropathic, constant, not being relieved by any kind of pain medications. And your treatment options are quite limited. So it's important to remember that laminectomy and discectomy are not treatments for back pain. They are leg pain surgeries. So the fourth clinical scenario is when you have back pain with instability, but no leg pain. So this is an example of a 19-year-old engineering student with back pain only. If you look very carefully, you can see that there is a spondylolysis with a very, very minimal listhesis, less than grade 1. The disc looks healthy and he's young. So we offered him a repair of the pars defect, which is called a Buck's procedure. We're just putting cannulated cancellous screws across the defect and putting some bone graft there. This is another example of back pain with instability. So 40-year-old bodybuilder with chronic back pain, and you can see the lysis, the pars defect at L4. For this patient, we weren't very confident of offering him a pars repair because he was going to go back to heavy lifting and gym. So we offered him a fusion procedure. He's doing very well, drives across India all the time. So just an instrumented fusion without decompression. So decompression, like we said, was a leg pain procedure. So we are treating the back pain and we know what the cause is. So when somebody comes with a lysis alone, and I'm wondering, is that the cause of the pain or not? I give them a diagnostic block in that area. Just put some local anesthetic there, and if they get off the table with no pain, then I'm more confident that that is the pain generator. And if I address that problem, they're going to be relieved of their pain. So this is the fifth clinical scenario, which is back pain and leg pain with instability. So instability by lysis listhesis. So if there's back pain and leg pain, so for back pain we do. So this patient had a high grade listhesis with the back pain, with leg pain. We managed it with decompression, reduced the listhesis, and an instrumented fusion. So that is what was done. There are certain gray areas, though, to this clinical scenario that I put forward. One is recurrent disc herniation. So in a recurrent disc herniation, you have two options. Either you can do a revision discectomy, and the results of which are pretty good, or you can do a discectomy with the fusion. So because a lot of our patients ask us, you've done this once, the disc has come out again, and we know that there's a 4 to 5% chance of a recurrence with following a discectomy. So they said, what is the chance of it coming out again? And I tell them there is a chance that it will come out again. And they said, oh, we don't want any more surgery. So then in those patients, we think of offering them a fusion. Tell them it's a slightly bigger procedure, but you're out of bed and walking the next day. So it's shared decision making in this gray area. So whether you do a revision discectomy or a discectomy with fusion. The second gray area is degenerative listhesis with leg pain only. So if the patient has got leg pain only with a degenerative listhesis, in an elderly patient with a stable listhesis that is not moving adequately on flexion extension views, you have an option of doing a decompression only or a decompression with fusion. So sometimes you can get away with the decompression only and they do pretty well. Sometimes the decompression may further destabilize that segment, and then they may go on to more listhesis, which may require fusion. So shared decision making will help you decide whether you're going to stick to a decompression only or a decompression with fusion in this gray area, which is degenerative listhesis, which with very low grade listhesis. So in conclusion, if the patient has got leg pain from a neural compression, the treatment is decompression. If the patient has got back pain only from a lysis or a listhesis, you can offer them a fusion surgery. If the patient has got back pain and leg pain, the treatment is decompression and fusion. So that is the surgical part, but I think you need to be aware of non-operative treatments because majority of our patients require non-operative treatments, and we need to be sure that we are offering them evidence-based current treatments. So I've listed 8 different treatments that we we think about. Number one is bed rest. So bed rest is not considered a treatment for back pain anymore. There is little or no. So this Cochrane review has shown that there's little or no difference between bed rest versus staying active. So for most of our patients, we tell them that they can sit and stand and walk. I tell them you can do whatever is possible for you to do within the limits of your pain. I don't enforce bed rest. Traction, this is something that was popularized by Hippocrates, and traction for low back pain has little or no impact on pain intensity, functional status, global improvement, and return to work. So traction for lumbar spine disorders is probably outdated and should not be used. Physiotherapy and exercises, there is a lot of evidence that it does work for acute and chronic back pains, and it's something that should be tried. Electrotherapy in the form of shortwave diathermy, ultrasound, and TENS, there is insufficient evidence, and most physiotherapists whom I work with don't use any of these. So we haven't used these things. We don't use much of this in our institute because our physiotherapists also believe that it's of very limited efficacy. Medications, yes, NSAID is first line of treatment for most back problems. There is no evidence that one NSAID is better than the other, but it may not be a great option for chronic back pain because you cannot use it for long periods of time because of the side effects that are associated. Oral steroids have been used to provide relief in lumbar disc herniation with radiculopathy. Anticonvulsants, antidepressants are used quite commonly now for chronic pain in the form of gabapentin and pregabalin and amitriptyline, and we use a lot of this for chronic back pain. Fluoroscopy guided steroid injections, there is good evidence that it gives significant relief of leg pain for patients with lumbar disc herniation. Just coming back, just summing up what I mentioned before. So there is good evidence to show that exercises, multidisciplinary rehabilitation, advice, and manual therapy work. There is two things. Traction is known to be ineffective. Ultrasound, TENS, and other modalities of electrotherapy are known to be ineffective. Acupuncture, we really don't know what the current evidence is. Hydrotherapy has got some limited evidence, limited use for patients with back pain. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you.